Hello, I'm James Ellis. Welcome to another edition of The Next Step, the podcast trying to help you, the talent acquisition leader, the employer brander, the recruiter, take the next step with all the amazing AI tools that are out there. Now, remember, none of these tools, none of these things are sponsoring this podcast. I have no interest in that stuff. What I want to do is help you. Not them. You get comfortable understanding all the things these tools can do, because right now they are absolutely radically reshaping recruiting and employer brand, and it's happening right under our feet, right under our noses in some cases. So I'm going to show you some ideas on exactly what you can do with some off-the-shelf tools. I'm not going to focus on recruiting tools. There are plenty of people talking about great AI recruiting tools, and I'm going to let them. I'm talking about off-the-shelf stuff. So primarily, I'm going to focus on my two favorites, Claude and ChatGPT, though frankly, Gemini, Notebook, there's a couple other good ones. I mean, they have different kind of use cases. So this is stuff that is very accessible to you. And if it costs anything, you're talking about $20 a month, which, let's be fair, for a $20 experimental fee to just try it for 1 month and see what you can do is going to be 1,000% worth it. Okay, so today, remember though, I forgot to mention, all of the things we're talking about are real world situations. And what I'm doing currently, because this is starting the podcast, I'm going to other people's podcasts and listening to their interviews with talent acquisition and employer brand leaders. And I'm listening to their challenges and I'm inferring their problems. And spoiler, I'm actually using AI to help me surface some of those challenges. We can talk about that in a separate episode. Anyway, today's episode is for my employer brand friends who, let's be fair, I hope I have many of those at this point. It's Ashten Fizer, who is a dear friend of mine. Shout out to Ashten. Thanks for wearing my shirt. I love the picture. She was on Chad and Cheese podcast just 2 months ago. Shout out to Chad. Shout out to Joel. Thanks so much for letting me ride on your coattails yet again, as is what I do on occasion. So here's the deal. She had a nice interview with Chad and Cheese, Ashten did, talking about challenges in employer branding. So what I did is I grabbed their transcript. Chad and Cheese, thanks so much for providing a transcript that makes this process so much easier. And I dumped it into Claude. We can talk about the separation between Claude and ChatGPT separately. That point of view is, for me, is changing all the time. And I asked Claude, I said, hey, Claude, here's the transcript of this interview. Can you identify challenges either stated or implied by Ashten? And Claude did a great job. Claude came up with 5 different things. Now, we're not going to tackle all of them, but I do want to point out what came up. So first off, and by the way, I will link to the actual episode if you want to dive in and hear what she actually said, not what Claude said she said. Totally do that. By the way, big shout outs to Chad and Cheese, big shout outs to Ashten. You should be friends with all of them. They're wonderful people. And honestly, if they don't hear me say this on the podcast, tell them. Anyway, so the 5 things that Claude said that Ashten saw challenges in, and Ashten, if you want to fight me on this, don't fight me, fight Claude, but I'd love to have this conversation at some point. The first one is inauthentic employer brand, which we're gonna fight in a very surprising way. Teaser, it's happening this episode, so hang on. The second one is lack of regionalized recruitment strategies, right? It's a one-size-fits-all situation. Actually, it's for regions, especially for, not outside the US. Most of us focus on one country at a time. Third, one size fits all messaging. Huge challenge. I see that in my own work and I see that in a lot of places. 4, insufficient transparency. Totally valid. And I have a lot of thoughts. And finally, limited talent pools due to geographic restrictions and a big, long argument about the issues around remote work and why don't companies buy into it. I'm not getting into that one. That is a sticky tar ball I'm not involving myself in. But some of these others have some interesting ideas. Now remember, I'm not just going to say it. I'm going to try and shape for you actual prompts you could be putting in so that you can do this at home and at work. I want you. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you, my friend. I want you to do this stuff now, okay? This is not that's a good idea. I'll do it one day. No. Do it now. Open up Claude. Open up ChatGPT. Do it now. Okay. So the first challenge is inauthentic employer branding. And Ashten, thank you. You are my friend. You and I. Simpaticos on so many levels here. There's so much in thought in authentic employer branding out there. There's so much Dare I say it? Yes, I dare. Crap, total flipping crap out there. The world is just filled with garbage. And what's really interesting is that when you have a really crappy employer brand, it's very easy to grab that inauthentic, crappy employer brand, throw it at ChatGPT and say, make some stuff. There is a situation happening on the internet called internet slop, which is AI generated content based on other AI generated content. It's just like turtles all the way down, right? It's ugly. The content isn't useful. It's not valuable. It's getting stupider. It's slop. There's a reason they call it slop. And I want to avoid that. And I want to say, look, there are ways of making your employer brand feel more authentic, or maybe more importantly, actually be less inauthentic, to be more authentic. So let's talk about what I might do. Now, Ashten comes up with some ideas identifies some problems around, hey, it feels very press releasey, it feels very scripty, it feels very central casting, right? There's this idea that, corporate should own this brand and so therefore should dictate exactly what everything should say and what everything should do. And I've seen that work myself, and it sucks, and it's hard to kind of get a CHRO or a CFO to realize that the employer brand should not be speaking around the entire company per se, but should be speaking first to the audience to which it needs to address, i.e. the people you're trying to hire. When a CEO says, I don't like that brand, in my head, I say things, and I don't speak them out loud, except to you because we are friends. I think things like, yeah, it shouldn't speak to you. You already have a job. I don't need to hire you again. Simple as that, right? It depends on how salty I get. And you love it when I get salty. So what are some things we can do with AI right now that are not AI slop that help you pull this out? Okay, so here's what I did. How to get to this? So here's what I threw. So I actually asked Claude. I said, okay, so some of these challenges, I have some good ideas, but Claude, I'd like to hear from you. And I asked it, let's see, let's scroll down so I can actually tell you what I asked it. I said, hey, what are some creative ways let me say it again. What are some creative ways I could ask you to resolve some of these issues? And it came up with some stuff. Honestly, it came up with some stuff that's pretty much straight out of the employer brand kind of textbook, right? It's, hey, you should curate some employer generated content. Hey, you should make a unfiltered workplace campaign. You're like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, okay, that's fine. Claude, is this particularly creative? I don't know. But here's what's interesting about Claude. When you get to use AI, you realize very quickly, because we're so used to Google and we're so used to just, I need an answer, give me an answer, there's the answer, we're done. This is not a call and response situation. This is a conversation. Very easy to say things like, hey, for the challenges around your number one point of inauthentic employer brand, and I asked it, could you dig deeper and come up with some more creative ideas? And you know what? It did. It says, hey, let's come up with a series of worst day ever stories. And when I saw that, I kind of went, oh, we're all in trouble, because that's pretty smart. Imagine this concept where you ask people to tell you on video, on audio, on blog posts or whatever, to tell you their worst day at work stories. This flies in the face of all a happy, shiny, we're all wonderful, great people. This is a fantabulous, wonderful place to work. Look at our awards. Look at all our shiny photos. And it might as well be stock art for as good, as authentic as they are. This is the antidote. Tell the truth. Tell the worst day stories. Now, some of you are going, oh, James, my friend. No, that is, I do not want to get fired. And I don't want you to get fired either. There are not enough employer branding jobs out there for everybody right now, which is unfortunate. So I do not want you to get fired. However, remember that if we collect these stories, and I know people are going to have names attached to them or their voices attached to them or their faces if they do videos, and that's a scary thing to do. What if you said all this content is going to remain internal? However, you grab 5 of these stories and you feed the transcripts into your LLM of choice, your ChatGPT, your Claude, and you say, look, I want you to review these stories. And I would like you to write an article quoting at least 3 different stories. Please remove any personal identifiable information. Please remove anything that would suggest or anything that would get a company in trouble for revealing too much information. Give it context, right? These prompts can be nice and long. And write a first draft of an article or a blog post. I would personally, because I'm me, I would say very specifically, write it in the tone of voice of, and I would identify a person. For me, I have a couple of go-tos, and this is me spoiling my secrets. I like, if I want to do, kind of direct and to the point, I like an Adam Grant. If I want something a little more emotional, I like a Brene Brown. Sometimes it can be a little too emotional. When I want clever and wry, I go with Seth Godin. Yeah, I'll go there. Uncle Seth, he knows what he's talking. He knows how to write. You might just keep it straight and actually provide an example of your corporate tone of voice. Maybe you say, here is a recent, I wouldn't go with press release, but maybe you go with a recent article or something else that your internal comms team has written or an external comms team has written and say, make it sound like this. What you're going to get back is a first draft of a very, very safe article that will use quotes without names, no personal identifiable information that you're going to want to grab and you're going to want to read really carefully and be very sure that the lawyers can't point to it and say, hey, that you can't say that. That's a bad idea. You're also going to want to frame it to say, look, other companies talk about how great it is, but we all know companies are not always sunshine and daisies. Let's talk about some of our worst days. And you might even then close the article by simply saying, and here's what we do to keep you from having fewer worst days or to resolve those worst days. You might even embed that in the stories themselves. You might even ask people when you ask for those stories to ask for that information. What did you do? How did you make sure this never happened again? That is going to be the kind of content that is going to make a candidate go, whoa, what is this? I've never seen that before, which is going to be the antidote for so much of your inauthentic employer brand stuff. The next thing it said, man, and it got rude. Claude, I've been working with Claude enough that I think Claude has started to adopt some of my saltiness. Terror? Yes, I'm spawning. Competitor comparison confessionals. That is, ask an employee to say, tell me where you used to work, tell me where you work now in this company, like what team and what role, and identify what was better in the old company and what was worse in the old company. What was better in this company and what is worse in this company. Do that 5 or 10 times and you've got the raw material for one hell of an article, for a series of stories. There is some really great content in there. And I think the fact that you're willing to say, I'm comparing and contrasting, like all companies are different. It's not about good or bad. It's about right fit. You can even bleep out the name of the company if you decide to turn into videos and stuff like that. This was kind of an idea I kind of went, oh, wow. Yes, it takes some guts to put this kind of content out there. But if you are worried about your inauthentic employer brand, not anymore, are you? No. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back to some of the challenges and take a different approach. So we're going to look at next one-size-fits-all messaging, which is absolutely a problem I see a lot. So you have an employer brand. Maybe you have an EVP. And if you do, maybe it's good. Fingers crossed. Anyway, too much editorial comment? Sorry, this is what I do. So you're going to take that information, as much of that information as you have. And I'm just going to pause. I recently did a study that looked at employer brand decks and found that roughly 5% actually have content of value. Right? You get that 80, 90, 150 slide deck. There's only 4 or 5 slides that matter. Pull those out. Use those specifically. Don't give it the whole deck because there's so much junk and garbage and fluff and salesmanship. It's just going to mess the thing up. If you don't know how to do that on a PDF, take your PDF, upload it to ilovepdfs.com, and have it pull the individual slides, glue them into a single deck that you use just for this sort of thing. You're welcome, ilovepdf.com. I do love you. You are fantastic. You have saved my bacon compressing PDFs so many times. We don't even need to talk about it. Anyway, there's your EVP, your employer brand, whatever material, whatever formalized material you have, shrink it down to its most concise, abbreviated, and pure form. Great. Okay, now, what you want to do is go and say, how would I communicate this employer brand to that audience? Now, what audience am I talking about? I don't know. What audience you got? Do you want to talk to Black engineers? Great. Do you want to talk to new grads in the business space? Great. Do you want to talk to new Black grads in Maryland? Great. You know what you do? You go to LinkedIn and you find 3 to 5 people who fit that profile, their actual LinkedIn profiles, and grab them and scrape them. It's really easy to scrape this content. And you're going to scrape this content and put it in a single document. If it's a Google Doc, save as just have it download as a docx. It's just easier. It's smaller. It makes things easier. And you're going to go to Claude or ChatGPT and you're going to say, hey, this is our EVP. Paste or employer brand, whatever you have. I want your thoughts on how I speak to an audience that looks like these three people pasted in. Do you have to identify what that audience is? I wouldn't. Because what happens is when you identify this audience, say, hey, these are young black business students in Maryland, the LLM is going to infer some stuff that you don't want. And this is one of the games we need to learn how to play. There are times in which you want the LLM to think big, to understand the way the world works and infer and bring in some other stuff. And there's plenty of times you just want to say, think inside this little box and do not exceed that box. For myself, ChatGPT is really good at knowing the bigger world. Claude is really good at being able to isolate its thinking to what you give it. So depending on the context, you might want to do that. So for Claude, in this existence, hey Claude, here are 5 profiles of people, the kind of people I would like to target. This is the employer brand. Maybe you then say, here is the job posting I want these people to fall in love with. Here's what I want from you. 1, what are some edits you would make to this job posting to be more attractive to this audience? 2, write 3 social media posts that never use the words we're hiring or join us that would make these people be more inclined to look at this job. And 3, let's go a step further, come up with a 3 email drip campaign and a couple examples of subject lines that would start to tell this story of why someone should want this. For the drip campaign, do not sell the job. Do not give a call to action until the 3rd email. Submit and you will be blown away by what you're about to get. What's really interesting to me is when I do this, I'm always surprised by it infers things I can't see. It connected dots and things I simply couldn't see. And I'm not saying Claude is smarter than I am. Some days, on a bad day, I think it beats me out on some things. But this is some place where if I had a couple of hours and I really had some focus and I had the lo-fi dubs in my headphones where I kind of focus music and got that lo-fi chill and I was really caffeinated properly, I could really kind of connect and come up with some ideas. Claude does this in seconds, and this is kind of where you want to take advantage of it. It will realize that all these people, these 3 or 5 people, have similar features and have similar ways of speaking and similar words and language they use. By the way, when you're picking these people, find people who post a little bit, not the ones with, they didn't even remember to put the banner up and they have one job and it just says title and that's all they have. Get one where people are talking. If you can find their Facebook posts, go and do that too. Scrape as much about these people as possible. You're trying to give Claude as much of an understanding of who this audience you're trying to speak to is. You'll be stunned what it comes back with. Grab it, use it, play with it. Now, once you get good at this, and you should be able to do this for lots of different audiences. You should maybe even get to the point where you're asking your hiring managers, hey, is there an audience that you think would be perfect? Is this the kind of job that we should be looking for underserved, underrepresented people? Is that who we should be looking for? Is this the sort of audience where you only want people who worked in a top 100 company? And there's valid reasons for both. And what they say is useful and it will help frame your search set. So if they say, yes, the person in this job, because it's a senior director of blah, 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 and it's going to do whatever, yes, they need to have worked in a Fortune 100 or Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000, whatever, at a certain title. Great. You now know what to go search for in LinkedIn to find the 5 people who are kind of like that. If you're unsure, take those 5 people and say, hiring manager, I am not reaching out to these people, but are these the kind of people you would like to have brought in? Are these the kind of people you want to get excited about the job? And when they say absolutely, you know you're on the right track. Is AI doing all this? No. But is AI doing all the hard stuff? Yes. What it takes is you understanding what it can do and understanding what you can kind of embrace and take advantage of. 3rd challenge that Ashten mentions, insufficient transparency. Now, this is one of my favorites because I am 1000% behind Ashten. I had a guy, I won't give names and I won't give company names, who pinged me. I think he makes employer brand videos for a living. And I love employer brand videos. I think we should do a lot more of them. But he asked me an interesting question on LinkedIn the other day. Yeah, that's right. Live, one take kind of stuff. Live, drinking water on the air. I'm not going to edit that out. Anyway, he asked me, he said, hey, what's some great examples of employer brand content that really kind of prove the employer brand? And I knew what he was looking for. He wanted me to say, here are 5 videos that I think do a really good job telling the employer brand. I didn't give it to him. And I literally said, you're not going to like my answer, because my favorite examples of how to prove the content or how to prove the employer brand are not what you and I might refer to as content. Content is this external thing. Videos and blog posts and social content and podcasts and photos and testimonials. It's manufactured to prove a particular point. And let's be fair, I cut my teeth in content marketing before I was in employer branding, and I love content, and I'm a big fan of content. However, we're not here just to tell a story that people fall in love with. We're very much trying to prove an idea. We're really trying to prove, hey, candidate, we mean this. We believe in this. This is what our DNA is. This is how we see the world. This is what matters to our company. Manufacturing examples of that is good. Showing your day-to-day and how that DNA exists and how it manifests every day is better. And so the example I gave was Buffer. And I said, look, Buffer's all about transparency. They want you to know that they're incredibly transparent. And they could have made a great video saying, we care about transparency. And they would come up with some little anecdotes that were cute and fun and interesting. You're like, oh, that's really interesting. Or they could have just done something real, which is what they did. And they posted their actual salaries for all employees. Yes, publicly, their salaries are live. They're out there. You can go see them. Is it content? Kinda. Is it that manufactured content that you think of when I say we should make some content? No, it's a completely different thing. And I believe that if you want to get past this whole, lack of transparency, show the real stuff. Don't tell a story about it, but do it. Now, the problem here, as you know, is a lot of stuff that we keep behind the curtain or behind the wall, so to speak. We do so for a reason, right? Lawyers are kind of like, oh, you can't say that. You can't talk about that. Comms is like, whoa, that's not released yet. That's, and if you're a public company, anything that's I wish the term, I blanked on the term. Anything that is a direct impact on what the stock price might be, can't say that stuff either. You are very locked in on what you say, and consequently, we tend to color inside the lines really, really well. Sometimes they're very, very pretty drawings we make, but they're very much inside the lines. Transparency means being able to see past, see through the lines, through the walls, through the curtain, and seeing what's really going on the inside. Now, how can AI help with this? Well, here's the thing. What is the most realer than real thing that your company does in an open fashion inside the garden walls, right? The stuff that happens. And I'm going to say, based on my experience in-house, that is going to be things like what's on your Slack channel. Right? We all have, if you are on Slack or if you're on Teams, chances are you have a team group and you have a couple of off company, pets of this company and, hey, coffee talk or just stuff. And there's a comms one that's official and there's one that's an executive one that's official and you're not allowed to post to that because you're not an exec and you're not in comms. Right? You got a lot of different these Slack groups or team groups and they're there to kind of segment. Personally, different groups give different vibes. You go look at the groups for different teams and you can see they're talking to each other. They're complaining. They're looking for something. They're asking for help. And how they write is as real as one gets, right? This is not an email where you might be a little more formal. This is Slack. This is just Teams, right? You just say, hey, who's got the thing? Hey, did anybody see that thing last night on TV? That was stupid, right? Or what crazy thing is happening now? And the emojis that happen, the little tags that happen on all that stuff, that is raw. That is raw culture in action. You can't just open your Slack channels to public expression or public viewing. You can't do that. You can't do that. You will get fired. And again, I'm not here to get you fired. But what if you judiciously took a couple of different channels and scraped the content from it and said, ChatGPT, please review the following content from our corporate chat channel or corporate Slack channel or corporate Teams channel. Again, you got to give it constraints. You want to say, this is from this team, or this team. What I'd like you to do is review this content and identify commonalities in tone, in language, and how you would describe the culture of a company that talks like this. Now, what's happening here is you're giving raw, unfiltered, the stuff, the shit, as it were, to your LLM and you're saying, look, I'm going to let you be the transparent and completely objective administrator of this content. I want you to review this content and tell me what's really going on. You're asking for it to describe the culture that from this information. They're using this Slack channel, this Teams as evidence and extracting how would you describe this culture. Feel free to use quotes. Do not use any personal information. Please do not apply any titles, any work-related or product-related language in any of this content. You're going to be very, very specific about what it's not allowed to say when it's going to pull quotes. You might even say, when you describe the culture, please give examples of why you came up with this. And it's going to say, hey, this is a very collaborative culture, and here's 3 posts about what collaboration looks like. You are going to take all this content and turn it into an article. And maybe it's not an article. Maybe it's a handout, for lack of a better word, a digital handout that you only give to people who work in those teams when they've gone through the screening process. And you say, look, we think you're really interesting and we want to talk further. We know you have a lot of questions. And I think one of the biggest questions is, what is it like to work here? We took our Slack channel, scraped it and ran it through Claude and asked it to describe our culture based exclusively on what it was seeing, how we talked to each other, the questions we asked, how we responded to each other, all of that. I can't show you the raw files because you don't work here, but we think this is as close as you can get to understanding about what the day-to-day looks and feels like without showing you stuff you're not allowed to see, and just email it to them. Blown away. Just blown away. They will be stunned by what they see. And it's going to provide so much credibility for the recruiter, for the company, and it's going to really set up any conversations at the offer letter stage, because it's really going to say, hey, if we're providing and talking and touting this culture of XYZ, and here I can show you examples of real world examples of how it's happening in real time. It's not a press release. It's not a poster. It's how we are. You're really setting yourself up for success here. And that's how you can use AI. Now, all this stuff is absolutely right off the shelf. I will say, if you're using, I did have to ask my friend ChatGPT, can one scrape Slack? Can one use chat to look at Slack? And it's like, yeah, I can't do it directly. But if you have administrator rights, you can grab some stuff, which means you should talk to administrator. Or, and because the internet, you can take screen caps. You can literally just extend the window to the size of your monitor, capture screen, do it a couple of times, and feed the images into Claude or ChatGPT, and it can read the images. It will understand what you're doing. So you can do it as a test without involving your administrator. And yeah, test it before you just publish it. You might be a little stunned by what you see, and this might actually help you identify places in which you're not living your brand the way you think you are. Maybe there are pockets of the company that are completely embracing that brand and pockets that aren't, which, by the way, is a huge opportunity for you to go in, dive in, and fix it. So, Ashten, these were great challenges you brought up from an employer brand standpoint. I'm so thrilled you brought up and chatted with Chad and Cheese. Too many sounds. It's too much. Thanks so much for being, and I, so hopefully you found this information useful and valuable. If you are not Ashten, tell Ashten I did this. I'm going to do it anyway too, but you should too. And tell your network about this podcast. I'm really serious about helping you take the next step, because until we take the next step, technology is just going to wash over us like a tsunami and crush us. And I do not want that for you or us. We need to take these tools seriously, and we need to do it today. If you would like me to handle your challenges with AI, I would love that too. Go ahead and send me an email with a voice memo. Just explain your challenges, or a challenge, singular, plural, it's up to you, in as much detail as you like, and I will do exactly what I did to Ashten's episodes. I will feed it into Claude and say, identify the problems that we might be able to see. That way, we have an outside objective viewer looking at this stuff. I would love to help you solve your problems. So please do that. You can email me, you know my email, you can find it, or you can LinkedIn message me or whatever. I'd love to solve your challenges on the air. Otherwise, tell a friend about this new podcast. Tell a friend, make sure they subscribe on YouTube or wherever they get their podcasts, or on the newsletter. That's fine too. I'm going to send it out to everybody. Hopefully this is incredibly useful stuff, and it will help you take that next step. I'll see you next time when we've come up with another couple of challenges about how we can use AI to help you get better at your job. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.